time of day for many of us to get out, and we appreciate all our friends who are here today to learn more about this important topic. Dudley Williams, who's our moderator for today, the Director of Corporate Citizenship and Diversity for GE Asset Management, is going to do formal introductions, but I am just quickly, because I know you're not here to hear me, I am just quickly going to thank the people who need to be thanked. Thank you so much to all of you for coming out. Thank you to our sponsors and our good friends. Thank you to the Ferguson Library for hosting today. Thank you to our keynote speaker, Professor Kirk. And thank you to Sylvia and Sandy, who you'll be introduced to soon, from the Union City School District. Winnie, I don't know where you went, but as always, thank you so much for your continuing support of Stamford Achieves and what you do for the children of Stamford. That having been said, a couple housekeeping issues. One, we do have copies of Professor Kerb's book available. They'll be available during and after the program. He will personally sign them for you, and they are discounted $5 or $20 here, $25 at Barnes & Noble, so please get your copy here. Finally, I know some of you will have questions, and so we do have cards. I hope that you got your card on the way in. If not, Linda, in the black and white checkered jacket in the back, if you hold your hand up, she'll bring you a card so you can write down your questions. And as we progress today, there'll be an opportunity to submit the questions and hopefully have them answered. So having said that, and thank you again, all of you, I'd like to introduce Dudley Williams and turn the program over to Dudley, who is also the co-vice chair of Stamford Achieves and a longtime board member. Thank you, Dudley.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Very good. Improbable Scholars and the story of Union City is one that captivated our attention on the Stamford Achieves board, and I think would resonate with all of you here. And the reason is it's a story with an ending that we all care deeply about and would like to see happen everywhere. It's a story of a city with high poverty and a city with a school district primarily of children of color that is achieving significant academic success. And it's proving that it can be done. The other interesting thing about the story is it's like a great movie with no superstars. I guess I couldn't think of a movie, but it's like an ensemble piece where it's a great story, but the characters, the actors are people you recognize, but it's no great superstars. It's just regular people doing regular work and getting incredible results. And that story is told in Improbable Scholars masterfully by Dr. Kirk. It is a great book. It's well written. It's like reading a great New Yorker profile. You can't put it down. But it's a very, very compelling personal story. It's a very compelling story about access and equity and what we're all capable of doing with the right focus and the right energy and commitment and around getting the job done. To explain a little bit about the program, what we're going to do is first we're going to hear from Professor Kirk. Then after that, 3 of our panelists are going to make brief 5-minute remarks, and then we are all going to move over to the stage here and have a brief discussion about the book and about Union City and also hopefully about Stamford. So I will start by introducing Professor Kirk. Excuse me for a moment. David L. Kirk is a nationally known education expert, and he is the James D. Marver Professor of Public Policy at the Goldman School of Public Policy at the University of California. From the beginning of his career as a professor at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, children's issues have been his passion. In 17 books and scores of articles in newspapers and magazines, including the Times, the LA Times, Nation, and the Atlantic, as well as leading academic journals, he has covered the education waterfront from cradle to college. And the great thing he does in this book is to give a very accessible, real-life story and details around what is making Union City the miracle that it is, because it is a miracle, yet there's no one walking on water. So it's a great story, and he does a great job telling it. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Professor Burton.
I guess by now, anyone who thought they were attending a performance of the Jerry Springer Show knows they're in the wrong building and needs to proceed down the street. I needn't tell you that this is a very contentious time in public education. Just going to stay here. Okay. Just yesterday, Arne Decken, the Secretary of Education, before he was locked out of his office, that's another story, dismissed as armchair critics anybody who thinks that kids should not be tested every year and the teacher shouldn't be held accountable for those test results as the basis of school success. That's pretty powerful language, and Duncan is usually a more mellow guy than that, but as I say, these are contentious times. In Los Angeles last spring, Michael Bloomberg invested well over $1 million. Rupert Murdoch, about the same, in a school board race in Los Angeles. So odd. I mean, Michael Bloomberg is, in New York, and the thought was, he's being termed out. Maybe he wants to, make a move to the other coast. But $4 million to defeat a candidate who was an incumbent on the board, whose sin was that he had said, let's go a little slower with charter schools. Let's review what's happening with some of the schools that we're approving, and maybe we don't want to base the...
I'm sorry, folks are having a hard time hearing you.
Well,
Do your best, that's all we can ask for.
yeah.
Spencer can help.
Is there an actually setting this up so that I'm not doing it or not? Try. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So it really is the Jerry Springer Show. Walk around with my mic. So the reason that Mayor Bloomberg and Rupert Murdoch and all poured $4 million into a school board race in Los Angeles is because the candidate, the incumbent on the board, had said, let's go slow in the charter school world. Let's not approve everything that comes along. And, let's not base so much of teachers' futures on how their kids perform in tests. Let's look at other factors. So that was enough. The union wound up spending $1 million on the other side of this. Has got to be the most expensive school board race per person. And interestingly, the incumbent actually won 52% of the vote. The same kind of event was repeated this fall in Seattle. The same kind of competition between folks who believe that you can really make good public schools work well and those who believe that the system is irremediably broken. And that's the trope of the day. The word is crisis. Education is in crisis. The public schools are hopelessly bureaucratized. Teachers are time servers. The only thing that's going to make a difference is within those schools to apply a strict dose of discipline based entirely on scores on truly high-stakes math and reading tests. And better yet, you create competition in the system by relying ever more on charter schools and on vouchers. So you'll hear a lot of that talk. And on Monday, I'm going to be in New York, an event called NBC Education Nation, and I discovered that Randy Weingarten, who's the AFT president, the Teachers Union, American Federation of Teachers president, and I are the only people who don't sound like we're always promoting markets and charters and vouchers and think that New Orleans is the best place and the best school system in the universe. People have asked me, how do I become New Orleans? Folks from Atlanta said, we want to be like New Orleans. And I said, it's really easy. Have a flood. Get rid of half your students, fire all your teachers, bring in tons of money from outside, and it's still not going to be a very good system. So what happened? What has happened in Union City, New Jersey, and you'll be meeting the superintendent and the assistant superintendent in a few minutes, is a resounding rebuttal to that chorus of naysayers about public schools. And it's not just a Union City story. There's a chapter in the end of the book called What Union City Has to Teach America. And that's presumably what we're doing here. Because you're going to be sitting and listening to this conversation through the filter of, so what does this have to do? What can we learn in Stamford? What can we learn in Norwalk or other nearby towns here today? And the answer turns out to be a fair amount. But meanwhile, here's why you want to pay attention to this story. Union City, very poor, one of the 100 poorest cities in the country. The most crowded city in the country. And that means you got a lot of new immigrant families living 3 or 4 families to an apartment behind locked bedroom door with a shelf in the refrigerator. You get 10 or 12 people in that apartment. Crowded in that sense. Low high school graduation rate for the city as a whole. The unemployment rate about 1.5 or 2 times the national average. By any metric you care to use, this is the kind of place where you'd expect kids to do really badly in school. And there are many, many places in the country in which that's true. But the reason you want to pay attention is that the graduation rate in Union City is now over 90%. So those of you who don't sort of keep those figures in your head, the national average is about 76%, and I'm told that the average in Stamford, Connecticut, a far wealthier community, is about 80 or 81%. So there's a lot to be learned from how did this place, where the kids are almost entirely Latino, where maybe a quarter or a third of them are undocumented, so they're always worried about what's going to happen when immigration shows up and will mom or dad get sent back to the home country. How did they manage to do this? How did this place, right across the Hudson from Manhattan, and by the way, a really wonderful city. I loved being there. I'd urge you, it's an hour from here, have a great meal in any one of a dozen different Latin American countries, restaurants, go shopping, enjoy the life of the place. When is the big parade?
There's one in June.
The October parade.
Oh, the October parade towards the end of the month.
And at the end of the month, there's a big Latin American parade. It's folks from all around the country, and you get a sense of the life of this place. A call from one of the constituents. 25 years ago, the schools in Union City were second worst in the state. Now, the worst schools in the state were in Camden, and those of you, right, that's Camden, right? So in Union City, people would say, mordantly, thank God for Camden, right? Because otherwise that would be us down there. They were an inch away from being taken over by the state and run by the state. That was then. And so now, you make a fair claim to being the best urban school system in the country. And I wanted to figure out how they did this. And I'd heard about the place, I visited to look at an amazing preschool program. I just spent a day walking into classrooms from kindergarten through 8th grade, saw good teaching, saw great teaching, saw lots of hands-on teaching, didn't see any of that kind of the teacher asleep behind the desk and the kids watching movies sort of teaching that critics of urban schools will tell you is what's there. I thought, I want to stick around. And these guys gave me what amounted to a passport to the district. I could go any place, talk to anybody, drop in anywhere. Nobody was shepherding me around. Nobody was telling teachers, he's coming in the door. And I mean, I spent about, a quarter of that time in one third grade classroom with a bunch of Latino immigrant kids who were learning English and prepping for the first high stakes test. I was Mr. David in that class, and the most fun thing I've done since the book has come out is to have a pizza party for those kids who are now a couple of years down the road and full of stories about what's happened and what's happened since then. I met with other teachers, sat in classes, talked to the principal of the George Washington School, which those of you who get the book read a lot about, visited other schools in the district, hung out in the preschool, in the high school, which has really turned around most recently, spent a lot of time in the administration offices, sat in on meetings, on strategy sessions, met with the mayor, this amazing character, the Energizer Bunny of mayors, and a third generation Irishman in a town that's 90% Latino, who gets 90+% of the vote, who is also, because in New Jersey, this is the politician's dream, you can be a state assemblyman or a senator and be a mayor in a town, or a local official. So he's a state senator, and like any good politician, he's befriended the governor. So Chris Christie may not love public education generally, but he loves Union City. All these folks talked to community organizations to try to get a feel for what was going on, and the answer was very much, I love the metaphor of, the great story without the leading actor in it, right? There's, the parting of the waters with nobody having partied. It really is true. There are no, Waiting for Superman, some of you remember that movie? There's no Superman or Superwoman or Superperson in Union City. There is a culture that's been built up over time. It's the anti-cult of personality. There's no quick fix. There's none of this, okay, we're going to close the school, turn it around, fire these teachers, bring in those teachers, life is going to be different. There are no charter schools in town because there's been no demand for charter schools. Parochial schools have a declining enrollment. Indeed, wound up one of the parochial schools closed because the parents decided that they would rather have their children in, is that somebody's phone? Okay, thanks. Oh, that bag that's sitting up there. Whose bag is that that's sitting up there? Okay, it'll end. The offending bag. We might want to grab that bag, however, since this may happen. Superintendents are busy folks, not to name names.
It's definitely Dudley's bag.
Great. So, you don't have teachers getting rewarded or beaten up for how it is the kids do on their tests. They get help, they get supported. The aim is to make them better. The aim is not to kick them out the door if they are showing signs of having problems. By the way, just a parenthetical note, if you were to look at how Michelle Ree's students did in her first years as a teacher in Baltimore, she would have been fired by herself, just like that. What did they do? It's a model of continuous improvement, slow, steady improvement. Adaptation at the margins. Figure out how to build a system of support for kids from preschool all the way through high school, and keep tinkering, keep modifying, keep looking out there to see what's worth doing, what new is worth doing, and make it happen. This is for those of you in the business world, you'll remember Edward Deming. Edward Deming was the guy who's credited with the Japan Miracle. He was the guru to Fortune 500 companies. It's continuous improvement. Those of you in the preschool world will know something about the high scope curriculum, with a very simple curriculum. Plan, do, review. The kids get together, they figure out what they're going to do, they go do it, the teacher roams around and helps and works with them, they come back and they review what they did. Plan, do, review. If it works for 3- and 4-year-olds, it turns out to work for school districts as well. So everything that Union City did, and a lot of it, I was talking a bit to Sylvia and Sandy beforehand, very much what Stamford is doing as well. What they're doing is familiar to any educator with a pulse. That's the good news. The more sobering news is that it's easy to say that, and it's really, really hard to accomplish it. And if you sort of think you're done, mission accomplished, you know, if you just keep your eye out, let your eye spray from the ball for a second, you're in trouble. It's the process of learning and adjusting and working with teachers and kids and administrators and the community never ends. So this is also not a, let me get my back here for a second. Let me describe what it is that Union City does. I'll put these pages in some vague order. Start with building a really good preschool system. And that's one of those sentences that sounds, classically, sounds easy. Build a high-quality preschool system. You have a community in which maybe a third of the kids are in the public preschools. And one of the very best preschools in the country is the one that the school district runs. But a lot of the kids, because the school district didn't have the space to run all the preschools, and there existed child care centers, some not worthy of the name child care, existed prior to a court decision that said we're going to fund 2 years of preschool. The district managed to take 30-plus schools, nonprofit, church-run, for-profit, city-run, and make out of them a system of schools, a miniature system that's good enough so that you can walk into most of those other preschools, and if you didn't see the sign on the door, you wouldn't know where you were. You wouldn't know what kind of a school you were in. So that's taken and keeps taking a lot of work. When, at the crisis moment in the district, the folks there realized that the two biggest concerns were language, bilingualism issue, and reading. So you have kids, 75% of these kids come to school from homes where Spanish is the language, and the dining room table where it's the telenovela, not the reality TV show or Jerry Springer that's on the TV. So the philosophy there, as any good linguist would tell you, is to build up the language skills of these kids in their home language. And then, when you've done that, gradually transition to English. So you get classes in which kids are grouped by tables which constantly change, and as they learn more English, they move on down the road. Kids who have been, it's a gorgeous process. If a kid shows up in 3-4 years old, by the time they're in 4th or 5th grade, they really are indistinguishable from their peers. But they do a great job with those kids. But immigrant kids don't just conveniently show up right before school begins. You got a lot of kids showing up every year, 13, 14, 15 years old, and whatever their school papers say, they really have had a 2 or 3 years worth of schooling. They can't read or write in Spanish. So the district has 4 years to teach them Spanish, to teach them English, to teach them 9 years worth of academic stuff, and to teach them America. So about half of those kids graduate. Just to put that figure in comparison, about half of all the Latino kids in New York City graduate. So these are kids, families who've been here forever, and they're a whole lot better off. I don't know any place in the country that does as well as that. And you just imagine what that accomplishment is. And this past year, of the top 20 graduates in the class of 550 or so students, 3 of them came to this country 5 years earlier not speaking any English. And those kids didn't just put their heads down and study all the time. I talked to them, and they had a list of activities an arm's length long. They were definitely integrated in the life of that school and that community. So that's the bilingual part of the story, really crucial. And I've got to say, that high school piece, that's an example of adaptation at the margins. That's 5-6 years ago that they began working on that aspect of the program. And it's now a national award-winning program. The other part of the story is the words, literacy, reading, writing stuff. Poor parents generally don't have the time or the energy to read to their kids or to talk a lot to their kids. It's a fascinating study by a guy who is clearly an obsessive compulsive, because he counted every word that parents spoke to their kids. And they visited professionals' families, middle-class families, and welfare families. And they found that the kids from a home where mom was on welfare, this is a 1990 study, those kids had heard 30 million fewer words by the time they were 4 years old. 30 million fewer words. And many of the words that they heard, proportionally, many more of them were negative, controlling, don't do this kind of words. Well, that's a huge gap to overcome. In the school, you go into those schools, you get a sense of what a word-drenched environment it is. They're reading great stuff, they're talking about stories, they're writing every day. There's lots of emphasis on learning this new language. And I didn't realize how tough life had become until I was in a second grade class, and arid was one of the vocabulary words. That's kind of fancy for 6 and 7-year-olds to be learning. It's a district that assesses its kids a lot and uses those assessments, not, again, to discipline teachers, but to inform teachers and coaches and others about where the kids are having problems and where the teachers are having problems. And the district can slice and dice that data in all sorts of interesting ways. The guys who are interested in discipline and punishment could just have a field day figuring out, oh, you didn't do as well with this group of kids as that teacher down the hall. You're slipping this year as opposed to last year. But that's really not what the data is there for. You can, if you discover, for example, that students in your class are having problems with word problems in math, or having problems making sense of nonfiction passages in the reading, that you can focus your energies on those kinds of skills. So lots of testing used both to help the kids with concentrated help, either individual or in group, depending upon the nature of the problem, and to help the teachers as well. The teachers in Union City don't come from fancy universities. This is not a Teach for America place either. And there are some, just to be clear, I think there are some great charter schools. I don't think Union City needs them, which is why they're not there. There are some great Teach for America teachers. They would be disruptive in a place which is staffed, like most of American school systems are staffed, by homebodies. People who grew up, went to college, got married, came back, started teaching, and stayed teaching within an hour and a half's drive of where they began. And these teachers learn enormously from each other. You watch classes there, and I have no doubt that the same would be true if I wandered through the schools in Stamford. This is really, where do these guys learn this? And I will say, I never did hear somebody say, oh, I learned all that in college. They learned it from each other. A lot of collaboration, a lot of cooperation among teachers. There's time set aside during the week for teachers to work together. If one teacher is having a hard time with, math or writing or what have you, a more experienced teacher will take time out, work with that teacher in the classroom, the novice will watch the expert teacher, the more senior teacher teach a writing lesson, they'll co-teach a writing lesson, then the novice will teach, and the expert, the veteran will watch. It's very much like the medical plan, the medical model, watch one, do one, teach one. And when the district uses consultants, they're much less inclined to send folks out to standard issue training programs, much more inclined to bring the consultants, the coaches into the schools, into the classrooms to work where they are. The structure of the system is a coherent structure. You can walk into a third grade classroom any place in that district right now, and you're pretty confident as to what the general topic is going to be this week. So the curriculum is consistent across schools. There is variation in terms of the novels or stories the kids are reading, or the kind of science experiments they're doing, but the guts of the program are the same. And the reason for that is really simple. Poor families move a lot, 2, 3, 4 times a year. And so if you go from one brilliant school, a fabulous program that school has developed, to another brilliant school that's developed its own program, a lot of kids are going to get lost because there's not much overlap. And the material is scaffolded one year leading to the next. When I was in school, I think it was my 9th grade teacher who sort of proudly introduced us to Old Man and the Sea, and we didn't have the heart to tell him this was the 3rd time we had read Old Man and the Sea. It's not going to happen in Union City. Finally, this is a place where you have a culture of respect. You just get this. People care about respect, acknowledge each other, and of warmth. You can figure out what a school is like by walking in the door and just feeling the atmosphere. People are genuinely committed to one another. This is not Happy Valley, this is not Valhalla. Of course there are going to be issues that arise, but I never, in all the time that I was there, in all the grades that I was there, saw kids doing the sort of the back talk, the behind the back talk, all the sort of stuff that urban school kids are supposed to be doing. In fact, one little story was an okay middle school math teacher, 8th grade math teacher, and I walk in and these kids are just raptly listening to a very boring math lesson, competently taught. And at the end of the class, I just sort of wondered about the fact that there was so much focus, so much attention being paid to this lesson. And she said, you know, a couple of weeks ago, we had a kid move in from another district, and he started making fun of me behind my back. And the other kid said, cut it out. And they went up to her after the class, and said, don't worry, Miss So-and-so, we have your back. Imagine an 8th grade kid saying they're teaching a math teacher? We have your back. Pretty astonishing. So you put all that together, and you see how it's evolved at the margin. And it really isn't a surprise that if you take powerful, proven game changers and put them together, great things will happen. So a word about beyond Union City, and then let me turn the mic over to Sandy and Sylvia. After I finished working there and spending a year there and writing about the school, I thought, is this just Union City? Is this kind of a wonderful story, a New Yorker piece, but not something which anybody else is going to learn from? And so I went looking around the country for big, medium-sized, little districts. Districts that spend a lot of money, like those in New Jersey and those in Connecticut. Districts that spend almost no money, those in Texas and California, half as much money. Districts that are unionized, not unionized, elected school boards, mayorally appointed school boards. I wanted to find districts that were beating the demographic odds, where the achievement rate was rising more rapidly and the gap closing more quickly than you'd expect looking at the population. Districts that were beating the demographic odds. And I found there are variations in those places. People like different curriculums. People have other different sort of variations that depend on how much money you've got. And let me tell you, if we can talk about that a bit down the road. But poor districts have to triage in ways that you would find, and I find immoral in terms of the choices they have to make. But still, they're doing the same basic thing. It is a pre-K through high school, build system on system on system. Didn't find the one variable, the one factor that was invariant in all of these places was stability. Every one of these districts had leadership that had been in place for a good while. That wasn't going anyplace. It's not as though there hadn't been a lot of political tumult at various points in the course of the district, but they had come to a place where the people in the community and the teachers and the parents and the administrators had found a way to work together. It's true in Union City, it's true of a place called Aldine, Texas. Houston's poor cousin, bigger than Boston, bigger than Washington. And it's true, in Montgomery County, Maryland, where your former superintendent now resides, 15th biggest district in the country. We're a very impatient nation. We want results now. We want the quick fix. And so the question I'll leave you with at this point is, on this crucial question, are people willing to give schools the chance to build and to grow? They're willing to believe that this may be one domain in which Aesop had it right, in which the tortoise does sometimes beat the hare. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kirk, thank you. The next part of our program is we're going to have each of our panelists make a brief sort of 5-minute statement in response to what Dr. Kirk said and beyond. We're going to start with Sandy Sanger, who is the superintendent of the Union City School District. Since assuming the leadership of Union City in 2003, Sandy has supervised a renaissance in public education that has transformed, as you heard, what was once one of the state's worst performing school districts into one of the highest. And some of his accomplishments include reconstruction of the district's instructional core curriculum, development of a comprehensive early childhood education program, implementation of a state-of-the-art educational technology program, and achievement of scores among the highest on the New Jersey state standardized exams for all urban districts over the last 10 years. If you haven't read the book already, when you do read the book, you will read a story of really incredible leadership and a degree of personal dedication that is really just breathtaking, and it's just a remarkable story. He and Sylvia are a terrific team, and I think he's just a great public educator and someone that I think we can all be proud of. So, Sandy, please.
Thank you so much, and as the superintendent of schools in Union City and representing the Union City Board of Education, it is a pleasure to be here this afternoon. Thank you for having me, and it's just great to say thank you to all of you for coming together as advocates, as ambassadors for the children in all of our school districts, both in Connecticut and New Jersey, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. I have a tremendous amount of respect for what each and every one of you do each and every day. I understand the challenge, I understand the hard work, and I certainly would like to take a moment to congratulate you, to thank you, and just to give you a brief idea about the Union City School District. And let me tell you, first and foremost, we are nothing special. We are just everyday, hard-working educators who have a plan and we work the plan. And it's very, and much like that, it's very, as easy as that and as simple as that. And I would like to say here that I've read up on, I've done some research on the Stamford School District, as well as some districts in Connecticut. While I'm not an expert on it and don't have a tremendous amount of knowledge, I do recognize the tremendous amount of work that's being done here, in your district, in your state, and how everyone has come together. And that work in urban areas is truly not recognized by so many people in our society, so many different interest groups, so many different people who may have an influence on education. What is going on in urban education, as well as suburban education, whatever, many tremendous things are happening. But what's going on in urban districts is just tremendous, and my hat goes off, and I congratulate so many of those educators that are in those urban districts, and the partners and the people, again, who support that. And I am blessed in Union City. I'm very fortunate that I have a Board of Education that supports me in each and everything I do. Yes, we do have an appointed Board of Education in Union City. I am an advocate of appointed boards of education, and I will say this. Many of you may have heard about the Abbott funding in the state of New Jersey for urban districts, and we've had the pleasure of enjoying that funding for about many, many years now, over 15 years, and 13 of those years I've been superintendent. But through that Abbott funding, we've been able to do just some tremendous things. And that funding has allowed us to move forward and to do all the things that we want. So we've enjoyed that funding, and we're able to do that, but it's what you do with that funding. It's the utilization of that funding. And that's how we've been very fortunate to have that. Something about the Union City School District. We are large, we are urban, we have over 13,500 students, 97% Hispanic, 87% free reduced lunch. Yes, poor, ladies and gentlemen, poor. And 34% bilingual ELL, English language learners. 11% special needs. Do the math. 34, 11, 45% of our population is at risk. I say to Sylvia, we're starting this year behind the 8 ball. 45% at risk. But yes, a great challenge, but at the same time we have sustained academic achievement. And I emphasize that word, sustained. And we're very happy for that. We like to think everything we do is institutionalized, and that is the norm and not the exception. That is our goal in many things that we do. Then, of course, yes, this is a great challenge. 40%, 5% at risk. Some of those demographics that I've given you. How do we meet that challenge? Now, we've gotten a tremendous amount of recognition. David's book, thank you, David, visited Union City. Recognized LA Times, New York Times, well, maybe a lot of things we didn't deserve as well. Because don't believe everything, as they say. But a lot of great things happening, yes. But bottom line is that we've met this challenge, and we do not have the silver bullet. We have so much to learn by being here today, interacting with you, interacting with others, and just people who have a caring, and they certainly have a dedication for children and what we do. So this is about consistent daily work. This is about commitment by all administrators, instructional staff, non-instructional staff, parents, students, and community and partners, as many people in this room are. And I would like to say that we have data, we have proven in Union City that when the urban child gets the opportunity, they will excel and will be successful. And we have proven that by our success, our graduation rate, our test scores, and as well as many of our students attending Ivy League schools. And we're very, very proud of that, because they've given, what do we believe in? And I have to do this in 5-7 minutes, this is quickly. And I try to capsule this, and I try to be brevity, I will try to have brevity as my theme. But David mentioned stability. We believe in stability, consistency, and long-term investment. And in that stability, we talk about stability of a Board of Education through the appointed Board of Education. We have many board members that have been there for many, many years, have been in the peaks, the valleys with us, the ups, the downs, the good times, the bad times. When we had funding, lack of funding, whatever it may be, they were part of construction with us. They helped us construct with that. So that is so important, stability of Board of Education. I could sit here, or stand here this afternoon and talk to you all about the advantages of appointed Board of Education. But in my mind, and as I may have mentioned before, that the in the state of New Jersey, 4 of the districts that are excelling in urban areas just happen to have appointed Board of Educations. And everyone's rowing in the same direction. And it's just, I can only share with you my experience. And say that with that, of course, being an advocate for that. The stability of administrators, principals, assistant principals, supervisors. We have taken in Union City, this is my 40th year in the Union City School District. And in Union City, over that period of time that I know of, we've taken 2 administrators from out of town. Last year, out of 993 teachers, 3 left our school district. So talking about stability, which is so important. Again, everyone rowing in the same direction. And I can elaborate on that. The stability of teachers, few leave the district. The importance, as I said, stability of consistency of all systems. The approach at educational instructional practices. The consistency of that, ongoing assessments that David spoke about, but at the same time, Sylvia, who will be able to maybe expand upon that for you. And of course, the continuous cycle of improvement. And very simply put, how do we continue to get better? Every time we sit down with staff and everyone who's involved in the educational process, it's very simple. No fancy words, nothing big on a board, no PowerPoint. How can we get better? That's the total focus of every meeting we have, and nothing else. And with that, we have something in place, what we call a systems approach to everything we do. And we have something called a blueprint for sustained academic achievement, something we put together over the last 10 or 12 years, and all it is a plan that everyone follows, built upon all our successes. Evaluate, of course, implement, evaluate, assess, throw away, keep, build upon, professionally develop, whatever that. But we have a plan for everyone to follow. Yes, we believe in Union City. We believe in guided democracy. Yes, you can do your own thing, but I will tell you, we will guide you. And what I mean by that is that no one can act in isolation. Stanley Sanger does not act in isolation. An administrator cannot act in isolation. A supervisor cannot act in isolation. A principal, a teacher, a student. Because it's very simply put, and as I say, the banana that leaves the bunch will get skinned. And as in all aspects of our life, you go out on your own and you do your own thing. It's a little lonely out there. You get detached. You're not as successful when you're in the bunch, when you're in the group, when you're in the support system, when you follow the plan. So we put together something very simple, and the philosophy being, yes, we are a school system, but do you have a system within the schools that everyone must follow? And we be sure in Union City that everyone follows that plan, they follow that blueprint. We have something called face-to-face meetings, and when you meet face-to-face, there's a good chance you're going to see eye to eye. If you don't meet face-to-face, and put in the checks and balances and how we're following the plan, you're not going to be able to share those philosophies, share those practices. And David spoke about a number of those things. It is a comprehensive plan for all services for students, teachers, preparation. Everything is about data. It's data-driven. It's also about being fiscally fit. Heard of being physically fit, but we like to think we are fiscally fit. And a lot of that has to do with the funding that we do get in the state of New Jersey, and I'm being flagged, and we will be just ending in one moment. And we also like to set up forums as I finish. As David mentioned, very, very important how we learn from each other. Setting up forums for collegiality, how we can learn from each other. I talk with Sylvia sometimes what I call dark intellect. Yes, we know many people that are very bright, very smart, but it's in the practice. It's in how you transfer that intelligence,
and what they do into everyday practice and into that hard work to get the success that all the students certainly do deserve. So we try to set up those forums and within us, in our school district, what we do each and every day, grade level meetings, working with the union to be sure that everything's built, these type of sessions where we can share best practices, vertically, horizontally, inter-school, intra-school, whatever it may be, so we can learn from each other. And that's the greatest thing. To force these people who are bright and smart, let's get them out there. Let's put them in situations where they can share that with others. And some people may not be comfortable. We will provide the forum for them to do that, so we can all learn from each other. So that's basically, I could share many things. That's basically what I have to say, but this afternoon, I have someone that will be introduced to you in just a moment, Sylvia Botto, and I am very fortunate that we get recognition and because I have good people around me. It's that simple. But my Board of Education gave me the opportunity to pick those people, to choose those people. And that's where I'm very fortunate. And you'll hear from Mrs. Botto in just a few moments. So it could be said many things, but there's a chance for question and answer, and we'll be happy to talk with you. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks very much.
Sandy, thank you. Next, we'll hear from Sylvia Botto, who is the Assistant Superintendent at Union City. She has been in Union City for the past 33 years. She started, she was a student, and then she started as an elementary school teacher, science and math supervisor, and school principal. And her current position as Assistant Superintendent of Schools for Curriculum and Instruction, she directs Union City's educational programs and oversees the district's technology initiatives, as well as its pre-college program. And Mrs. Zabato has recently been appointed to a 10-member New Jersey Academic Achievement Task Force, which will examine and make recommendations on improving test scores for minority students. And I served on one of those panels, and I hope you do better than we did. So, Sylvia, please join us.
I've been told to be brief. I'll try to be a little entertaining because it is the afternoon. I wanted to first begin by thanking Stamford Chiefs, Mr. Dudley Williams, which I had the pleasure of meeting, and his lovely wife, his better half. Dr. Winnie Hamilton, Stamford Public Schools. We've been reading up on the Stamford Public Schools, and a lot of the things that Union City has been doing, Stamford Schools has also been doing, so that's a credit to the superintendent and the Board of Ed. Dr. David Kerb, who we refer to as David Amigo. He's a friend. He spent over a year in one of our schools, and all of our schools actually. And when David approached us about coming to Union City Schools, we decided that it wasn't going to be the best school. It wasn't going to be the gifted and talented program. It was going to be a school at need, a school at risk. And David, everything in the book is correct, and there's some wonderful things going on in that school. I'd also like to thank Andy Sklover. Andy, where are you? Andy, thanks for the directions, great directions, and all the emails back and forth. I wanted to start out by the best decisions in education happen when the people making those decisions are closest to the children. I want to thank the Board of Education members that are here today, because you are also advocates of the community. And teachers know what takes place and what's needed in the classroom. They are your best advocates. I was a classroom teacher, and as David mentioned before, as Dudley mentioned before, as our superintendent mentioned before, we were in level 3 monitoring, which meant that we were not doing that great. At that time, I was a classroom teacher, and I remember the state monitor walked in, didn't say a word to me. I said, "Oh, hi, how are you?" Didn't speak to me, and just counted. Later on, when I was in central office and I read their monitoring report, I realized there wasn't enough square footage in my classroom for my students. So that tells you where the district was. And the superintendent has been in this new administration this 12th year. And we have established a belief that every student is college-bound and no student is unteachable. We overhauled our curriculum. We emphasize critical thinking skills, extended class times, and increased teacher training. We realize that the entire community must buy in onto the educational process, and that means parents, staff, educational, community members. When we first took over, I remember in the industry, there's leading indicators how the economy is doing. How is the unemployment rate? How is the manufacturing orders? How are the raw materials? There's nothing like that in education. In education in the past, you took your test in the spring, you got the results, maybe in August if you're lucky, probably September, October, that class moved on. So what we decided to do is we started to create district benchmarks, where we have interim assessments throughout the year, and there's correlations between classrooms, between subgroups, across the district, which gives us a little indication prior to the assessment taking place in the spring. It's like a clinical approach. When you go to the doctor runs several tests. Is it A? Is it B? Is it C? Or is it sorry, can't do anything for you? But you have a process. And that's what we do with the district assessments. We concentrate on the pre-K third grade foundation, building that foundation. That is the foundation of the house. If you don't have a strong pre-K foundation, what happens is the house crumbles. So that's our foundation. We promote continuous between home, community, and school. We develop the whole child through rigorous, locally developed curriculum. We have our teachers working on curriculum, which empowers your teachers, which then creates leaders at each school. We promote teacher leadership as a means of coherence and alignment, and we'll create a blueprint for success. Mr. Sanders spoke about the blueprint. What's interesting about the blueprint is our scores, and I hate to admit it in public as far as YouTube is here, our scores dipped 1 year. He said, Sylvia, what are we doing? This cannot happen again. Obviously, if you're in charge of curriculum and assessment and your scores start to dip a little bit, you worry. So we created a blueprint. We brought administrators on board. We brought principals, assistant principals, etc., and we looked at best practices that were taking place in each and every school, and we created a document. This document is used in every single school, and we revise that blueprint yearly. For example, now we're revising the blueprint to include park alignment and also the Common Core. We talked about effective educational leadership again in the blueprint, administration, assessment, and all that, and we'll go over that in the question and answer. But talking about institutionalizing success. Mr. Stanger spoke about face-to-face meetings. Face-to-face meetings, central office administration visits each and every school. And the principals pride themselves, okay, I got the motion. The principals pride themselves, and they show you all these beautiful documents, and then we have what's called the SWAT team visits, which are my favorite, because you come in unannounced. They can't prepare, we visit each and every classroom, and then we meet with the administrators and give them an overview of what we observed, how we can leverage the resources in the schools to do better. Since I got the hand, we have a very strong bilingual ESL program. What we are unique in is the fact that our bilingual ESL program is a transitional program where students get a lot of support, especially in the high school. We have what's called a port of entry program for our middle schools and our high schools. I don't know if the same thing is happening in Stamford, but what's happening is we have a lot of students coming in with very poor skills in their native language. Some of these students either have limited instruction in their native country or have never been to school at all. So these port of entry students go into these port of entry programs, and as David mentioned before, we had 3 graduates from Union City High School last year who were in the top 20 from the port of entry program. Use of technology, we have been infusing technology in the 3rd and 4th grades, iPads, smartboards, etc. STEM programs in the high schools and in the middle schools dealing with math, science, and technology. Also something that we are very proud of in the last few years, we've had 1 or 2 Bill and Melinda Gates Scholarship winners in our high school. These are minority students who are getting those scholarships, so that's a great credit to the district. Are we perfect? No. Do we have challenges ahead? Yes. Just so you know how the district was, when we took over as an administration, the general ed math scores in the high school, these are general ed, these are not your limited English students. These are not your special needs students. We have a passing rate of 30%. In the last year, I'm happy to say it's gone up to 75%. So given the opportunity, as Mr. Sanger mentioned, given the opportunity, the urban child can succeed. Are we perfect? No, there are a lot of things that we are not perfect. We are not great personalities, except when my hair looks good, you know, not too bad. But we work hard each and every day because we're there for the children. I come from a family of educators. I'm a twin. My twin sister is a principal. My dad, may he rest in peace, was a guidance counselor. My mom was a teacher in the Newark Public Schools. When I came to this country, I spoke no English. They sat me next to a girl that spoke Italian. If they were Spanish, Italian, same thing. Oggi parlo italiano molto bene. I speak Italian very well today. Because I had to translate it and speak with this girl. So now I'm trilingual. But those are the challenges that students can make if they have the skills in their native language. If they do not, then you have to give them the support mechanism in the school to get to that. So we have many challenges ahead. We look forward to the challenge. I know Stamford is on its way also with meeting the challenges of the students. And thank you very much. It's an honor to be here today.
Thank you, Sylvia. Next, our own superintendent of schools, Winnie Hamilton, has been superintendent of schools here in Stamford since July of 2012. And she has had a long and distinguished career at the Stamford Public Schools and, as a teacher, principal, and in central office. Dr. Hamilton.
I'm going to turn off my other phone. I apologize. I promise to be short no matter how long it takes. I know that all of you have miles to go before you sleep. Probably all of you are intending to go to the candidates debate at the Government Center. I know I'll be there. It's always nice to hear people's ideas and plans. I would also echo what Stanley and Sylvia said, and certainly I'll get to Dr. Crook's message in a few minutes, but the Stamford Achieve, Andy Sclover, the Ferguson Library for hosting this, Ernie DiMatteo. I think the audience that's here today is perfect evidence that people in Stamford are committed and care and want to know and hear about, as all of us do, what's working and what is, positive place that we can either begin or that reinforces the work that we're doing. I love the statement about plan, do, review. There's reference in the book about continuous improvement. Some of you who may be old enough to remember William Deming, who was a businessman and someone who, and I wasn't there, but in the 40s or 50s, tried to recommend in our country that folks really look at redefining the way we do business and how we improve our economy. And we weren't interested at the time, and he actually did his work in Japan. And in doing work in Japan, if you remember, and my father shared this with me, that Japan was not known at the time in the 40s and 50s after the war as having quality products. Matter of fact, they were known as having cheap, models of somebody else's work. And business and economy wasn't doing that well. So Deming really revitalized their market and actually turned them around, and we all know the products that come from Japan and the quality and longevity that's associated with their economic work. So that continuous improvement is something that is not, as you probably know, you would not build a house by buying the appliances and then, to start to create a structure. And you don't plan for retirement 3 years before you retire. It's a continuous process of planning ahead. And it's gratifying to hear today from folks who, over the 10-year, from 2003 when Stanley came to Union City, that they slowly but surely picked away, like the tortoise and the hare that they make reference to. It wasn't a race. Because there is no finish line in education until every child is able to absolutely be ready for whatever they want to do in life. If it's college, if it's the work world, it's that they have the options and the choices because they have a superior foundation in this 21st century. So the whole idea that this is continuous is something, as you hear, they did not begin by simply saying, I'm a charismatic leader, everybody, and now follow me because this is what we need to do. They began, as you heard Sylvia talk about, in the classroom and with the folks that have the closest and most frequent contact with children, teachers. And I think some of you may be familiar with Margaret Mead, who said, never doubt that a group of people can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing it ever has. I think the example that we talk about and that they talk about is a commitment. But I'm going to go over just some of the details, which I think echo some of the work that we've tried to do here. Preschool. For the last 2 years, in every grant funding money that I could locate, find, or secure, we have had over 400 preschool and kindergarten children in not sitting at the desk doing, classroom rigor, but enrichment. We don't want 4 and 5-year-olds who want to drop out. We want them to come and find joy in learning. And we've had over 400 children. This past year, with a grant that I was able to secure, we were able to put children from 2 of our schools in 6 weeks of summer school, not the usual 19 days, but 6 weeks, 6 hours a day. Not sitting at a desk, but having trips to museums, having trips to a library, getting a library card, which is a big deal. So we did a lot with preschool. And we're continuing to do a lot, and we may be putting even more Title I monies in what is most important. Begin at the beginning, and begin where the first impression and where you can close that gap so much sooner. I was a former high school and middle school administrator, and as much as we try, it's very hard when students are 13, 14, 15, and 16, and they have some basic skill work we have to do. The other that they refer to is parent engagement and buy-in and community, and rainy days or whatever, parents would come, they were interested. We have people here today that certainly, with traffic and everything else at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm certainly sure had things in places that they could be. But the commitment that we need throughout this community to support education, not just in budget time, but to support education by encouraging children and families and neighbors to go in and talk at school, to get extra help when it's needed, but to be a community that's engaged, and that's not just with parents. When we talk about the programs like which we are working on, and it's a work in progress and work we have to do with our bilingual population. We're not happy with our results, and we're in the process of changing some things. I think it reinforces that you need to be literate in your own language before you are just introduced in one language to another, because we all associate the language we speak to the next language we're speaking. If you don't know parts of speech or vocabulary, it's very hard to learn it in another language. So that commitment to bilingual education. Assessments. Years ago we had a gentleman named Dr. Stiggins here, and he talked about, unfortunately in this country, we test sometimes to find out what children don't know, so that we can then give them a grade instead of testing children to find out what they didn't learn, so we could reteach it. It's a philosophical difference, but it makes all the difference in the world. If you're testing me to see how, as a student or even a teacher in a class, how I could teach a concept different, then it's purposeful. I think you heard again and again about the commitment. And not just the commitment to change the world, but the commitment of teachers and school people in every school, and not an individual school, not one school, not a system of schools, but a school system. We've worked very hard on creating this. I come from a team background. One observation I made after years of going to the playoffs as a coach was the teams that had the stars never won state championships. They never got to the top. I mean, you can look at the Knicks, you can look at the Yankees, you can look at some professional teams. You know, a star doesn't win games for you. It isn't always who everybody wants to play with. But what wins is a team. The strength of a group of people who are committed and who believe that they can make a difference and who believe that they're doing the right work. We have a very strong teachers organization. We have a very strong, committed group of teachers. One of the other aspects that they talk about in Union City is coaching. Due to the generosity of the GE Foundation, we've been able to, with the investment we've made in professional development and embedded coaching. You know, I was a product of going to a conference. You know, and if it's a weekend conference on a Thursday, Friday, you then travel back, and maybe by Monday you're thinking, okay, now who do I tell this to, and how do I use this? But the idea of having embedded coaches is to do the professional development and then have somebody, a colleague, right there in that building that can model for you, that you can turn to, and is one of the best examples that you, as a colleague, who's taught the same children you have, who doesn't have an excuse that, I haven't had success with this child or that child. This is a colleague who is now the master teacher, the expert, and the person that's really helping you by modeling or working with you and helping build confidence and skill. So, are you raising your hand or you want to stop me, Andy? Yes, I'm sure. That's what I said. I was going to be, I've been short all my life, so I can't say I'd be short. But I just want to close with that it always is wonderful and reassuring that a lot of the work over 10 years that Union City has done is work that we have, we're on a continuum. We're working with staff and administration, and we're also working on keeping our teachers here and making it a place, even if they don't come from the immediate, we just got to get them off 95 in the Merritt Parkway if you've had that experience, but how we can keep teachers here and not just as has happened in the past sometimes. We train, we prepare, we create a background knowledge working in Stamford, and they're gobbled up by area districts as some of their most outstanding teachers, and we lose them. So we want to keep, and some of that will come in the budget process. We need to have competitive salaries. We need to pay people what they're worth, and I have to say personally, and it'll be my closing remark, that my father used to say that it's very important to have quality. Sometimes you pay for it, and you get the very best, and I think we have the possibility in a very competitive Fairfield County to put some of our best professionals in place to work with probably the most important thing in all of our lives, our children. And that's, Andy will close my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to invite our guests to come up to the stage. We'll have a hopefully enlightening conversation. We're going to open it up to the audience shortly, but I just had a couple of questions just to get things started. And I guess for our guests from Union City, a lot of what's in the blueprint and what you talked about is pretty can be pretty controversial. The SWAT teams, the frequent assessments, the face-to-face conversations with administrators and supportive teachers, and using assessment data to guide teaching. A lot of that stuff has proven to be problematic, and trying to implement that has proven to be problematic in many districts. So my question is what did you do to gain buy-in from teachers, from the union, from administrators around much of what's in the blueprint?
I will start on that, and then I'll hand the mic to Sylvia. But one thing we are very proud of is the fact that we do have a great relationship with our union. The relationship with our teachers is one that teachers know that we are not there to supervise. We are not there to threaten. That we are partners in the process. And they all know when we call a SWAT team, and all that means is a school-wide assessment team. Okay? You might think SWAT that you're going in there to check and they know though that when we come, it's purely and 100% constructive, 100% supportive. It also is a time for central office to evaluate themselves to see where our administrative practices, our connections, our bridge to the schools, are they all working? So it's assessing the most important thing in education, ongoing instruction, the improvement instruction. It's also the educational program. There's a trust built in that people know we're there and partners in the process, and establish that trust by your everyday practice, that nothing is threatening. We're there as partners. We will help you, and if you're a banana and you stay in that bunch, you're going to get the supports. And the supports are there, and that support has led to success. Sylvia?
And just to piggyback on what the superintendent said, SWAT team visits, to be honest, the schools do not welcome us. And we come unannounced, and we really don't even tell our district supervisors until that morning what schools we're going to visit, because everyone has friends, and there'll be cell phones, we're going to the school. But what the teachers realize is when we go there, and the administration of the building is, we're giving them suggestions how to get better. For example, last year we revised our district benchmarks to correlate with the new park assessments. We walked in one class, the teacher was using the previous year's benchmark assessments. Principal was just too busy to get into the classroom to see that. We were able to pick that up early on in the year, make suggestions, redirect district coaches, redirect resources, so the instruction component would be a lot stronger. So even though we don't feel as welcome, because no one likes to see a team from central office, and in other words, you're exposed as far as what's going on in your school, it's a collegiality, we're working together. As far as the union's concerned, New Jersey is implementing a new evaluation piece. How did we get around that? We had the union sit at the table with us, and we developed our own model. What we did was the union is a partner in that process, so we don't get that much negativism from the union.
Thank you. Next question is, you often hear people talk about the fact that it's not the money, but in fact, as you both mentioned, the additional funding that came from the Abbott decision had significant impact on your school district. Can you talk a little? I know you've mentioned preschool, but can you expand on that in terms of what the additional funding, the additional Abbott funding allowed you to do in terms of impacting instruction?
Money always helps. Whoever tells you money doesn't count, they're lying. Money always helps. Something we did with the ARA funds. We were lucky to get a nice infusion of ARA funds. And we used that to build the human infrastructure. Other districts spent it on technology, on buying things. We had literacy coaches, math coaches, special needs coaches, technology coaches. Since then, the district has picked up that cost. When it comes to funding, Title I funding, as all of you know, because of sequestration, the district lost over $1 million in funding. So it was, how do we look now of continuing the same type of services with less funding? So funding is important, but it's what you do with that funding. And I love technology, but technology is not the answer. One great teacher in the classroom makes a world of a difference. And it takes 2 to 3 years for a student to catch up if they have one bad teacher 1 year. So the investment that you make on the instruction component is the one that's going to be the most valuable.
I mentioned before that, you know, we've had some very positive, our boards have been very positive, our Board of Ed, the Board of Finance, and the Board of Reps in appreciating and respecting our needs and passing our budget, although they've been fiscally responsible. I think as I mentioned before, the $25 million over the last 5.5 years, that was a gift with some accountability about what are the results from the GE Developing Futures Corporation has been an investment that I think they've seen dividends for. There's definitely been a closing of the achievement gap, and there's been some significant improvement. And how we use the money, I, in presenting a budget, did not cut people, I didn't cut programs, I cut money from energy, from utilities, from oil and gas, from equipment that was not a necessity. So I cut those things instead of the need for smaller, although smaller classrooms are not the answer, it certainly is nicer to have a smaller ratio of teacher to children and paraeducators to support. So we used money for professional development, for embedded coaches, for additional teachers to support learning, for bringing experts in to help us with our math program, right through middle school, and we invested in all of the essentials, not expecting people to know what a new program in math was. Lots of investment in time and money and professional learning communities that we created. So I think that's a necessity to use money that will further the resources, and people are your greatest resources, not buying a program. That's not, it never has been the answer.
So let me add just a quick word. I think the most important thing that differentiates Union City from other places is the fantastic job they've done with full-day programs for 3- and 4-year-olds that are near universal in scope. So people say, how do you fund this? And I have an easy answer, just give it a senior year in high school. And if you think about it, if there wasn't football, why would there be a senior year in high school? Kids want to get out, right? Well, that's not going to happen. But in fact, the point of that is, it's still the case that in Union City, it's Abbott dollars that are funding preschool, and I hope when Abbott dollars go away, the commitment will be there. In Stamford, it's still extra dollars that are funding preschool, and I would hope my challenge to you guys would be that you should have as many kids, 3 years old as well as 4-year-old, in preschool that you cut, if you've got to, at the upper levels, because that's where the investment is going to pay off.
One final question before taking from the audience. You mentioned your homegrown talent and the fact that you've only hired 3 teachers from outside the district. That leads me to ask, so clearly your administrative team has come from within. So I wanted to ask what programs you have in place to identify and develop new school leaders.
Well, I could begin by saying, first and foremost, that we respect the educator tremendously. We respect the classroom teacher. We respect the educator tremendously. One thing we try to do in Union City, realizing the challenge, the hard work, and understanding with that should come reward, should come recognition, should be supports to help people grow professionally. And what we did was put together what I like to call an informal leadership academy, whereby we developed a structure of classroom teacher, master teachers, coaches, assistant principals, principals, various levels, all first and foremost in everything they do is instruction. People can help in different areas, assistant principal for discipline, learning environment, but all must be part of instruction first. So what we did We set up this informal situation, but in a way formal, because we had them serve on various committees, different task forces. Give them the experience in assessment, technology, support services, services to develop the whole child in many different ways. You recognize some talent, you recognize some ability, you recognize a commitment. Maybe we can work out with someone, instead of teaching in the classroom 6 periods today, you might be teaching 5. 1 period, you're going to help be part of a committee. You're going to be part of the assessment. You're going to be part of whatever it may be. There's different ways to do that, to work that out. But most importantly, that everyone has an opportunity to serve on committees, serve on different areas, help them to develop their skills, develop talents, work through that, and hopefully develop them as leaders. And then have them serve on the administrative team meetings that meet every weekly in Union City. Have them be part of those meetings, gain that experience, build upon that. Have 4 or 5 people on a team in each school. Once they develop, then you can send a person who now can go out and be a ambassador to another school that might be struggling, have them join that team and help them develop and help them move. It's a constant growth. It's a constant reach out and to people. So we do it in formal ways, informal ways, but give everyone an opportunity to grow. And I think when people see they will be recognized and will be rewarded from within, that good things can happen. In most cases, not all, of course, but in most cases, people see then that they will take ownership, they will be excited, you will get that dedication and that commitment.
Also, what we do as a district to leverage resources, we've used our Title I funds, some ARA funds, some grant funding as well, where we pay for additional certification for our staff. We found that our senior administration, senior teachers were retiring, and that left a gap on literacy instruction. So we partner with a local university, and we've been paying for our teachers, no cost to the teachers, gratis, for literacy courses so they can become literacy specialists. We do that through Title I funds. The district also has made a commitment to pay for ESL bilingual certification for staff, especially when it comes to the content areas and in secondary. We do SIOP training for teachers, which is sheltered instruction, how to teach those science teachers and math teachers who happen to have bilingual students in their classroom, how to build content area vocabulary. So those are some of the things that we do, leveraging resources from central office. Last 2 appointments were supervisors or former coaches. So these are people that not only talk the talk, but they walk the walk, and the teachers in the classroom appreciate that and respect that.
The only thing I would add, 2 years ago, the Fairfield County Community Foundation sponsored a leadership opportunity. It was called the Urban Fellows, where 4 urban districts participated. Candidates had to apply, they had to write an essay, and they were accepted into this program. Of the 22 Stamford, at the time, teachers that applied, 20 of them are now administrators, principals, or assistant principals, or in a leadership administrative role in Stamford. We continue, we've had Leadership Academies, Connecticut Center for School Changes work with us also to build some of our leadership, and all of those folks were internal candidates. What we need to do a better job with, and need to, for the teaching ranks, to have more local young people decide they want to be teachers, you know, we haven't had the funding to send and pay for scholarships or what the cost of college is nowadays, but we do have to find a way to grow our own, so to speak, so that we can build our ranks with folks that are products of Stamford Public Schools and also committed to the success of Stamford Public Schools.
Thank you. First question, where do you think your area of greatest need is to, I think this is, where is your area of greatest need, and what's the area that is always constant and never seems to get done?
My list is too long, go ahead.
A lot of things on the list. Bilingual ESL education is a challenge. I mentioned before, students are coming from foreign countries, and we have what's called two types of bilingual education. Those students that are very proficient in their native language, they're quick, they just don't speak English. Those are our regular bilingual education students. Then it's the port of entry students, where it's a little bit more challenging. These are students that in the high school have never been to school, and all of a sudden they need to know the alphabet. They need to pass a proficiency test in 11th grade. A lot of social services need to be given to those students, so that's one of the challenges. High school improvement, we're still working on that. We're not perfect with that. We have a strong early literacy basis. Our children in kindergarten lead kindergarten reading, which has helped tremendously in the district. Our middle schools are pretty strong right now. High school, there has been some significant increases in the high school, but we still need to work on the high school level.
I think one of the most important things now for us to challenge, and I'll be brief on this, that in years past we had many students coming from countries other than the United States. As we said, we're 97% Hispanic. But they were coming from the cities and had of those countries where they had opportunity for some formal education. Now more and more of those students are coming from those countries, from the rural parts of those countries, the mountains part of those countries, and their schooling, their formal background, their skills are extremely limited. So that challenge now is getting greater and greater than it may have been a number of years ago. But it's our responsibility, and we fully intend to meet that challenge, again, with ongoing improvement.
So when I spent my year in Union City, Sandy and Sylvia invited me to come along to these face-to-face meetings, and I went to the high school meeting first year around, and I remember saying that Union City was well on its way to being a really good urban inner city high school, and I said, that's great. I want to come back here in 5 years and say Union City High School is a really, really good high school. Forget the urban inner city part of the story. And they're moving in that direction. Just to make concrete one of the challenges that Sylvia alluded to, but 90% graduation rate. That's the good news. You've got 75% of the kids starting college. That's the good news. But here's the little secret. If you scrape by the exam that you need to pass in order to graduate from high school in New Jersey or Connecticut or whatever, two states that have pretty rigorous exams, if you just make it barely, you got a 9th grade education. So you are almost surely going to go to community college. You're almost surely going to be in remedial education, and the odds are really strong you're going to drop out. Most school districts do not track their students after they leave. So this is why the word attend is part of that sentence. It's to Union City's credit that they're upping the game. It's not that the school is not saying, my God, look at this, we've gotten a 90% graduation rate, which is fantastic. It's, we're not going to give every student, every 10th grade student is going to take the PSAT exam. So it's not as though every student is going to go to some great university that requires the SAT. It's just a statement to the kids, to the families, and to the teachers. This is not just good enough for an urban system. This is good. And I think it's really true. Where the clock is ticking, but I think if I go back there in 2 or 3 years, I'll be able to say, great high school, period, full stop.
Thank you. So another question, and one that I had. Going back to the blueprint, you mentioned a couple of things, but I was wondering whether you could maybe discuss 3 or 4 others just to give people a sense of what this great system or plan is in terms of the system that you use for
From the blueprint?
Yes.
I brought a copy of the blueprint. For example, one of the items is assessment. So what does an administrative team do once you receive the assessments? From early summer to setting up the classroom, analyzing the data, giving the teachers in the classroom the capability to sort the data and set up students in groupings, looking at district assessments and district benchmarks as early as October, November. We do 3 district assessments. Looking at diagnostic ways of students' reading ability before they come into the classroom, and then at the end, so to show some growth. Trying to think. Another item of the blueprint, again, is the instructional component. How are the roles of the coaches established at the beginning of the year? Having the flexibility of changing their schedule, so you might have a coach working with first and second grade, but when it comes closer to testing time, you might shift that coach's schedule to a third and fourth grade classroom for the remainder until the testing. And we start in New Jersey testing in the third grades. Looking at the role of administrators, whether they're vice principals, and the role of administrators, the role of the supervisors. We actually sat down and changed today the role of the supervisors. Looking at Common Core, looking at the park, looking at higher order thinking questions that should be taking place in the classroom, not rote learning.
And I think one piece of extremely important, Sylvia referred to our assessments, which we do in a 10 to 12 week period, our own internal assessments, not state assessments. Get to see, allow students not to slip through the cracks. All of a sudden the state assessment is in April or May. Oh, these kids are behind in skills, what do we do? So it's not late. We'll know by November where students who are in danger or at risk and that type of thing. And most importantly, in that structure of the blueprint, how to regroup students for differentiated learning within a classroom. Be sure the coaches are doing that. They're regrouping and having the fortitude to change teachers' schedule to meet the needs of the kids. You might be telling the teacher, you might have to change a class or a group or whatever 3 or 4 times in the year to meet the needs of the kids. Sometimes people get out of their comfort zones. They don't like that. But those are the kind of things that we have in place. Those are the kind of things we check on. Those are the kind of things that we work in a face-to-face way. Those are the kind of things that happen at grade level meetings, that happen once a week, at department meetings that happen once a week. And all of those meetings, exactly what should be discussed at those meetings. It's all about instruction, not about an assembly program, not about safety, not about books, materials needed, whatever. It's all about instruction. And there's a whole checklist, there's a whole profile, there's a whole piece that goes towards that. And that is all in place. The mechanics of an ATM meeting, administrative team meeting, exactly what to do. Exactly, once you go from that meeting, how you take that down into a grade level meeting, things of that nature. And all the things that you do, the steps towards that. So again, everyone is following the same plan. Because that plan, if done, great change will be successful. Not always, obviously, but the greater chance that you will be successful.
So when I took a look at this document, I was stunned by how boring it is and how obvious it is. And then I went back to these guys and I said, what's this about? And Sandy used the term, it's a checklist. Doctors go through the same thing. There's now interesting data on checklists, all the things that a doctor should do in the operating room, and doctors are resistant to this. I know about these things. These are dumb things. Why are you asking me to do this? Lo and behold, outcomes improve enormously. If you work your way through each of the items in that text came out of some problem that was spotted in the schools. They weren't just as a random set of associations. And the idea is to have this kind of basic frame within which to work, ideally automatically, so that you know it. That's the rule in which you're working. So you can then be creative. I mean, a classic example is state assessments. So all states have assessments, and they wind up coming to the school district. What happens in some school districts is they sit in the superintendent's office because the superintendent is scared to share them with principals or others because trouble will arise. Other schools, the assessments are shared with the principals, and the principals keep them in their office because they don't know what to do with them, and they're afraid of conflicts with teachers. So to have a set of standards that say, you got to talk about these with teachers. You got to figure out a plan, what to do to address this problem. Let's work through it. That seems, that's as obvious as who's buried in Grant's tomb, but it turns out that it's important and not so obvious.
I didn't talk about priorities earlier, but that just triggered a thought for me. We can talk about conflicting priorities. We have new state standards. We have an evaluation system that somehow is misappropriately aligned with learning and accountability. but, and we certainly have the length of the school day and the length of the school year, but I would, what just made me want to respond to this question now is time. Time is the big challenge. There's not enough time in the school day or the school year to have children perhaps not with the teacher, because teachers need to meet, they need to talk, they need to plan together, they need to look at data, they need to be able to assess what students are learning or what they haven't learned, and be able to do something about it. And you know, how you take a 6.5-hour day and make sure that children are having real contact time with the certified, highly qualified teacher, at the same time having time for teachers to be able to meet and talk and learn from each other to be able to apply that for the classroom. That is a major challenge that we face in trying to prioritize the best use of this short period of time we have.
Thank you. Next question, I think you answered this, but who appoints the Board of Education in Union City? And if you know the other Abbott districts that you referenced that were excelling?
The mayor, the Board of School Estimate, he's the chairman of the Board of School Estimate. And as mayor, he appoints the appointed Board of Education, those members, and he's held accountable by the public. And it is that simple. He's very serious about this. He's very committed to this. And I know I get many phone calls and with this process, but he is held accountable. And there are districts such as West New York, Perth Amboy, just to name a few around our state who do have appointed boards of education, and you have seen significant gain.
So this is one area in which I'm going to beg to differ with folks from Union City, particularly since you've got an elected board and you've got an election coming up. Union City is blessed by the fact that it's got a mayor who's very pro-supportive of a school system that is on a curve upward. The next mayor may have a very different view, and the school system may suffer accordingly. Sometimes mayorally appointed boards are great, sometimes they're okay, sometimes they're disasters. What's important is to build a system that produces stability around the very simple, the magic triangle of sort of what schooling is about. It's how do you connect the talented teacher, the engaged student, and the challenging curriculum. That's it. Everything else is a structure that's built around that. And whether it's the mayor in a community who sees the school as a convenient whipping boy if she's up for re-election, or it's the elected school board that says, oh my God, let's bring in a new miracle worker, this person's no good, 2.5 years, out the door they go, that's the disaster story. So I don't think, and the data suggests there's a slight benefit to the appointed board, but that is so overridden by building in a culture, which is not just a school's culture, but as in Union City, a community culture that is supportive of and embraces the schools.
Next question. I think essentially you talk about changes that were made to achieve this sustained success that you've had in Union City. Essentially the question is, what was the first critical step that you took that sort of started the district on the road to significant improvement?
Well, our scores. Like I said, when we first took over the administration, the elementary schools were doing pretty well. The middle schools, met a little bit, well, not too bad. But the high school, I remember having the first meeting with the high school math department. Their scores were 30%. At that time, I was young. I consider myself a little young, but at that time I was young. Everyone in the meeting was like this. Like, what are you going to tell us? So I got up and I said, you're all working very hard. We just have to work smarter. And we're going to work together as a committee and with the teachers, and we're going to develop a plan of how to get better. Not that you're not working hard, because you're working hard each and every day, but it's apparent that we're not getting the results. By the end of the workshop, teachers volunteered, Teachers started to come on board and assist us. Something that we did as a district was join state organizations as well as national organizations. We were lucky at that time that New Jersey had received a National Science Foundation grant, which was called the Statewide Systemic Initiative. And we realized that if students were not exposed to Algebra 2 by their junior year, they were set to fail in the HESPA, which is our standardized test result. So we eliminated all the General 1, General 2, General 3 math because we could have students technically not having algebra till they were juniors in high school, which was basically too late. We started training our teachers, partnering with the universities, etc. So those were some of the changes that we made. Also, we had some stellar middle school teachers that became district supervisors in the high schools. What's happening in the high schools, people have a set way of doing things for the last 20, 30 years, and they're not going to change. Oh, those are elementary people. Those are middle school people. Guess what? They're getting the results. So those individuals started working in the high school, and we started to have a mindset of, yes, you need to work in cooperative learning groups. Yes, you need to have higher order thinking skills. I know you might only have these students for one period a day, or maybe it's a block, but you still need to have, every teacher's a reading teacher. Even if you're a science teacher, you have something to do with reading. You have content vocabulary in your classes. So those are the types of mindsets that we started having.
I got the 2-minute warning, so one final question, and I'll ask the second part of this question. What programs are in place during the summer to complement the work that takes place during the school year?
One thing we do in the summertime, and again we hold the teacher as a very valuable component, we revise continually, and part of the continuous cycle of improvement. We work in the summertime on curriculum on a regular basis, and that cycle of revising curriculum to meet the needs of our students. We be sure that the teachers themselves are part of developing the curriculum. And this way it comes from the colleagues themselves. We do not use anything commercial, anything from outside. That's our philosophy, anything of that nature. They are teacher-developed curriculums coming from the teachers and the colleagues themselves for the ownership, for the input, and the people who have contact with students each and every day. So that's a very important part of our summer program, is how we constantly revise curriculum. Another, of course, is what we do during the course of addressing students who might be taking an 11th grade state test, which is so important. We call in New Jersey the High School Proficiency Assessment, the HESPA. What we'll be doing with 10th graders during that summer, going into their 11th grade year, and giving those people, those students, additional help and in place, put things in place that will help them and assist them through instruction, through program, just getting them into the mode and the mindset of what an 11th grade will be like, the rigor that's going to be there now, the new improved rigor, the relevance, and how that relevance, of course, is going to align with their lives. And a lot of this is new because it's a new challenge for them. It's a big step. Of course, summer school programs that I'm not big on, those in my mind, an extended day, those type things, because I know if it's not taught during the regular day, there's a good chance that students in summer school is not getting it. Yes, it's good for recovery of grade and things of that nature, but it's so important that a student gets the instruction in the developmental classroom during the regular school year. So there's a lot of value to summer programs. A lot has to do with teacher training, professional development, as well as getting students truly on a pathway and setting a roadmap for them as they going from year to year and what the expectations will be, and of course to start to mold them and give them the instruction they need to meet those expectations.
So I know, let me answer the question more in Stamford terms. I know that one of the big concerns here and in Connecticut generally is the substantial achievement gap. you look at student performance, poor kids, middle-class kids, there's no gap from September to June. Those kids are progressing in parallel. What happens during the summer is that middle-class and upper-middle-class kids get a rich bouquet of activities. Some of them, not summer school for dummies of the kind that my generation knew about, but a very rich mix of stuff. I mean, I come from San Francisco. The number of programs for different groups for different parts of the summer could fill a small telephone book, right? You get 4 weeks worth of, finger painting and archery and Latin class, whatever. Just pick the package that you want. But if a state and community is serious about narrowing the achievement gaps, that's part 2 of the story. Early education is part 1, summers are part 2. More generally, as you start evaluating what it is that you're doing, let me suggest a standard to you. It's the one that I use. It's the policy version of the golden rule. Is it good enough for a kid that I love? Not is it good enough for them. Is it good enough for a kid that I love? Why? And I will say that Union City, to my delight, satisfies the golden rule standard. If I were living in Union City, there's no doubt that I would send my kids to the Union City public schools. And I hope that I don't know Stamford well enough, but it's clear to me that just the kind of energy that brings folks out here on a lovely afternoon to listen to folks talking about a whole bunch of acronyms suggests some very good things are afoot and will carry on being afoot.
If I could add to that, besides supplemental programs for the students who are not at academic level, we also have enrichment programs where we have, starting as early as 4th grade, minority students go to our universities, such as New Jersey Institute of Technology, and they work on STEM careers, especially exposing young females, young minority females to the sciences. Right now, we have an overflow of females going into the STEM that we have to now get more males involved. But at the district cost, we send anywhere between 450 students in the summer paid for by the Union City Board of Education, including transportation, where these children are there from 8 to 4 o'clock. They get home at 5 o'clock. And it's a wonderful program. In the high school level, we have internships with the University of Medicine and Dentistry, with Seton Hall, with Princeton, where students, and again, these are minority students, they're getting internships, so they're getting a stipend for doing research, and that helps them in their college careers to get scholarships.
Thank you. We have gone past our allotted time, so I just wanted to close by saying that in the area of school reform, there are obviously many camps, but I think the biggest hurdle we face is the attitude held by way too many people that when it comes to poor and minority children, essentially what we have today is as good as it gets. And what Union City has done, and other districts around the country are doing it as well, is to provide concrete proof that that's not the case, that we can do better, and how to, as to why we need to do better and how we can do better. But you're a great example that there's no reason why it can't be replicated across the country other than the political will to begin to execute on it. We were fortunate here to have Professor Kirk brilliantly sort of capture the work that you two and your colleagues have done in Union City. It's a great gift, and I can't, even if you're not an education policy wonk, I can't recommend the book highly enough. It's a great read, and you'll find it. Just the personal stories are very compelling. So on behalf of Stamford Achieves, people of Stamford, we want to thank the three of you for taking the time to come to Stamford today and to share your story and to share your wisdom. We greatly appreciate it, and we've learned a great deal from it. So thank you.